Hey guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. Remember I had told you guys I was going to drop a tutorial on how to cut and sew this top with these two pieces. So here it is today. Please stay tuned to the channel and please any questions you have drop in the comments and I'm going to be answering them one after the other. If you couldn't get the tutorial on the trouser, please check my previous post because I posted it there. So let's get right into it. So this is my crepe fabric that I had used for the trouser. I got 4 yards of this fabric. I used 2 yards or 2.5 yards for the trouser, and let's say I'm going to be using 1.5 yard for this top. So the first thing you're going to be doing is to determine the length of your top. Whatever length you want is fine. That top went a little below the hip line. I used 28 or 29 for this, but I later adjusted it to 30. So my client's hip line is 28, so I just used 30 for this because she didn't want it to be too long. So I'm just going to be marking out my shoulder line. I'm just going to mark out the shoulder line. I'm going just basically going to be taking all my vertical measurements, rather your shoulder line, the chest line, the waist line, the hip line rather. So my waistline is 18. The waistline I'm using for this measurement is 18. I'm just going to be marking that out. And then I'm going to come to the shoulder line and take half of the shoulder measurement plus half inch. And then I'm going to be creating my shoulder slope from there. Go down by 1 inch for the shoulder slope. So to get my chest line, I'm going to go down by half of my shoulder measurement plus half inch. Shoulder measurement is 8 plus half inch as 8.5. You can tweak yours to fit your armhole. So I'm using 8.5 because I want it to be free at the armhole. I do not want it to be too tight. So that will give me my chest line. Now I'm going to create a shoulder deepening. So I'm going to be taking half of the chest line, which is 8.5, divide by 2 is going to be giving me 4.2. That is what I'm going to be using to create the shoulder deepening. And so on that part, I'm going to be going in by 3/4 of an inch. So you go down to your chest line and take quarter of your bust measurement. So I'm going to be taking in my bust measurement and then I'm going to be adding ease. You can add your ease of 1 inch or half of an inch. I used half inch here, but and on a later note I'm going to be adjusting it because it was looking too tight. So you can use half of an inch for your ease or 1 inch depending on how free you want it to be at the bust area. Oh, I forgot to mention that this is the back side of the top. So I'm drafting the back side first before the front side. So I'm just going to be connecting my armhole down to the bust point. So I'm just going to add my seam allowance of 1.5 inch. I'm going to be turning this with the lining. So that's why I'm adding 1.5. Now on the waist measurement, I'm going to take in quarter of my waist measurement as well. I'm going to be adding ease as well. Please make it as free as you want. You can add ease of 2 inches, 1 inch, depending on what you want or how free you want it to be. So for this particular tutorial, I wished I had added more freeness. I actually wanted to be more free than it actually came out to be. So add as much freeness as you want, or if you want it fitted, then that's up to you. Now the hip line, I'm going to be taking my hip measurement, quarter of my hip measurement. I'm still going to be adding my ease, and then I'm going to add my seam allowance of 1.5 inch. Then I'm going to connect all those points together. So on the hip line, I'm just going to be coming up by 3 inches to create a curve. You don't want it to be too straight, so I'm going to just create the curve and connect it back to my hip line like so. So for the neck depth or neck width, I used 3 inches for this for the back, and I used 1 inch for neck depth. Sorry about my tape, I mistakenly cut it with my scissors. So I'm just going to connect a curve on the neck line and then I'm going to slant that area back into my shoulder slope, and that is all we have for the back side of this pattern. I'm just going to cut that out. So after cutting that out, we are going to now go into cut the front pattern. Okay, so for the front side, you're basically going to be having the same pattern you had for the back side. Nothing, you're not adding anything. The only difference is in the way, the neckline rather. So I'm still going to be taking the same 3 inches I used for my neck width. You don't want this to be too wide because it's going to have a collar, and that collar should be able to sit well on your neck. So I'm going to be taking 3 inches, and then for my neck depth I used about 10 inches for this particular top because she's tall, so 10 inches will not expose her breast so much. So whatever is you choose to use for the neck depth for the front is perfectly fine. So I'm just going to go in by half of an inch and take it down to the hemline. So from that half-inch mark, I'm going to be taking half-inch down to the hem of the top, that is to the hip line. So I'm just going to be connecting that straight down. And so this is going to be a V pattern. So I'm just going to use my ruler to connect from the shoulder line to that 10-inch mark that I made there, and then I'm going to connect my shoulder slope. So that is basically the difference between the front pattern and the back pattern, just in the neckline. So I'm going to just cut that out. So I'm going to be using a lining for this. I bought a light cotton lining, so I'm just going to turn all of my pieces with a lining. This is actually optional if you do not want to go through the stress of turning with the lining, then that's perfectly fine, but I wanted it to be very neat at the hemline, so that's why I used a lining for this. So I'm going to be cutting a lining for my back pieces and my front pieces. So after cutting the lining pieces, the next thing I'm going to be doing is to cut the pocket that is in that top. So I'm just going to use my pocket depth. I think I used about 9 inches for this pocket, and then I'm just going to cut that out. And then I actually want the pockets to be a little bit wide. So remember that this is on fold, so whatever it is you have, you're going to be having it on fold. So I use 4 on fold. When you open, I'm going to be having 8 inches. So I'm just going to cut that out. That's the back side. So I've opened this up. I've put the 2 pockets on top of each other, that is the 2 pockets, and I've notched the center. So what I'm going to be doing is to create the slant. You've seen that the pocket is not straight, so I'm just going to create a slant. So I just went down by 2.5 or 3 inches, and then I curved it to the other side. So this is going to give me the slant. The next thing we're going to be doing is to take one piece of the front part. I'm going to mark out the back side. So that's the back side. On the front part, I'm going to take out one piece. I want this pocket to start 2 inches away from the center line. So I'm going to put the pocket under it and connect the curve so that I have the same curve that I have with the top, and it matches the pocket. So I'm just going to cut that out. So I'll put the pocket on top of it, and then I want it to be 2 inches away from the center piece. So I'm just going to fold in and top stitch, and then I'm going to sew the top part of the pocket by 1/2 inch as well. So I'm just going to stitch that and let you see what it looks like after. So I have already done the same thing to the other side. I top stitched there by 1/2 inch by 1/2 inch. I top stitched the lower part as well, and then I folded the top part of the pocket as well, as you can see. So I'm doing all of this before I turn with my lining. So the next thing we're going to be doing is to turn with the lining. Please, after doing this pocket, give it a good press so that everything lies very flat. So next we are going to be joining the pieces of the top together. So first I'm going to be doing is to join the fabric to fabric and then lining to lining. So I'll place the back side of my back piece, front side facing front side. I'm going to place the front side also, and I'm going to stitch them at the shoulder line. So I'm just going to sew that by 1/2 inch, and then I'm going to be taking the lining as well, and I'm going to be doing the same thing to the lining. Front sides facing front sides. I'm going to be sewing the lining at the shoulder as well, and then we're going to join them together. Okay, so I have gone ahead to stitch on the shoulders of both the lining separately and the fabric separately. So what I forgot to do was to record this part, but I turned the fabric with the lining already. So first I did was to put the lining right side facing the right side of the fabric, and I made sure that they aligned on the shoulder line. So I'm going to be turning the armhole with the hemming gum. So I turned the armhole of this with the hemming gum, and then I stitched the sides of both the fabric and the lining together. I turn the armhole, make sure it aligns on the shoulder line, fabric to lining. I stitch the sides, I stitch the hemming part. The hem part, I make sure I used a hemming gum as well. So I turn that with the lining and the sides. So from one armhole to one side to the hem line, and then to the side and to the armhole. I hope you understand what I did here. The only part I did not stitch or I did not turn with a lining was the center piece of the front part. The center piece, we are going to be having a collar there, so there was no need to turn with a lining. So the only part I didn't turn with the lining was the neck side, the neckline of the front side and the neckline of the back side. Every other piece I turned with lining. So I'm going to turn that out, I'm going to iron it, and then I'm going to show you what it looks like after. So as you can see, I did not turn the neckline of the front side and the neckline of the back side. So I'm just going to flip that to the right side and show you what it looks like. So as you can see, that's the downside of the front side. The armhole area I turned with lining, and the downside of the back side I turned it with lining. So the only part I didn't turn was this neckline area, because I'm just going to top stitch that. So this is what it looks like. I hope you can see clearly from the camera. I've ironed it out. I've ironed that out, and then for the neckline I only top stitched it. So as you can see, it looks neat. Okay, so before joining the sides, what we're going to be doing first is to join the collar. So for my collar width, I'm using about 2 inches. After joining, I'm going to be left with 1.5 inch. So decide how long you want or how wide you want your collar to be. So because I have a joining, I was short of fabric, so I had to join this strap. Because I have a joining, I'm going to be making sure that my joining is at the center back. So if your strap happens to have a joining as well, please make sure that it falls on the center back as well. So to determine the length of the strap, just measure round your neckline from the lower part of the front piece, round the neckline to the back neckline, and then down to the lower part of the other side. Whatever length you have, please add 1 inch, because you're going to be sewing the strap. Just fold it in like that and sew the edge by 1/2 inch on both sides of the strap, because you do not want to leave any rough edges. So I'm going to be going down to the lower part of my fabric. After sewing that in, I'm just going to sew by 1/2 inch round the neckline. We just sew round the neckline and round to the back side and then down, and that is going to be all for our collar. So this is what I have after sewing the collar on it. So I'm just going to give this a good press So there's going to be ropes on both sides of this place. Like you can see from the inspiration video, there were ropes on the waistline. So there were 2 ropes on the waistline. So I'm just going to be making 2 ropes, and I'm going to be sewing them like 2 inches or 1 inch away from the collar, the beginning of the collar on the waistline. I'm just going to attach those 2 ropes over there. And then this is what I have on the mannequin. I sewed the side, so shape your sides by 1 inch or however it is you want to shape it by. And so this is what it looks like. That is the trouser. This mannequin is very tiny, so it actually came out be looking big on the mannequin, but on the client, since she didn't want it so big, I actually made this a little bit fitted on her. So this is what we have after. If you want, you can add buttons to this. If you do not want, you can just add only the ropes that are on the 2 sides. And then for that flower that was on the chest area, you can just buy a ready-made flower, whatever design you want to give it. For this, I actually used a ready-made flower, and I stitched it to one part of the breast area. So if this tutorial was helpful, please like and subscribe to the channel. Bye.